Hi guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the education section. This video is going to cover adhering to training and basically give you tips and tricks to maximise your training consistency. If that's an area you currently struggle with, then this video is for yourself. So, starting off, the most important or one of the most important aspects of training as well as effort is going to be consistency. For example, you could train your training could be perfect for a week. You could train as hard as possible, you could train with the best form possible and have on paper the perfect week, but if you only do that every week or once every maybe month or 2 months, then that's you missing out on like 3/4 of the time you could be spending progressing. So what matters most is effort, good form, and then doing so over time consistently. You could even argue like consistency is even more important than the latter. So it should be a priority over anything else. So what we want to make sure is at the forefront of our program, consistency is what we're focusing on the most. So in terms of how we can stay consistent with training, the first thing I'm going to touch on is routine. So routine is something absolutely massive. If you fail to prepare, you are preparing to fail. As much as that saying's thrown about, it holds a lot of truth in my opinion. And I think something massively valuable in terms of managing your routine, managing your training consistency, simply planning your sessions in, as straightforward as it sounds. And what I recommend trying to have is set training times and set training days. For example, if you've got routine with your week in terms of what shifts you are, plan your training in around that and have like a set system that works for yourself. And some people maybe have work hours that differ on a weekly basis or their schedule can change. That doesn't mean you can't still have routine. That doesn't mean you can't still plan your sessions in. So plan it in every week, even if your shifts change. You can sit down on the Sunday and put it in Google Calendar. You can write it in your notes on your phone. You can use a pen and paper or a whiteboard. I personally like using Google Calendar because then you can put your shifts in it. You can put your training times in it. You can put any other commitments you have, like when you're going to do your steps, in the calendar, and it basically means you're going to be setting yourself up for success in that aspect. Like, don't wander throughout your week without a plan, without knowing when you'll get everything done, because you're just winging it, and as a result, winging your progress. So make sure you've got routine with when you get your sessions in. And what I recommend is if you work maybe different shifts or on a rota, then let's say sometimes you work back shift, sometimes you work day shift, or even mid shift. You can have a different routine with each day in terms of when you know you'll train, when you know you'll get the rest of your commitments done. But you can still, even if your routine changes, have a routine for each set day and have like a template for what each day looks like. But make sure you've got a plan in place of when you actually plan to train. Because if you just think, I'll get done at some point, you probably won't get done, or you will definitely not be as likely. My next tip for yourself with your training is treat it with the same respect as a job. This sounds extreme, somewhat you could say it could be, but with work you always show up and you're not going to say to your friend or anyone really, oh, I'll just leave work today, I'll do this instead, or you're not going to plan anything in during your working hours. The same applies with training. Allocate time to training and make that a non-negotiable in your day. Make that something you commit to and treat it the same as a job. Allocate the time and stick to it. And you wouldn't just not show up for work. You wouldn't just lie in and not get done and because of repercussions. The same applies with your training. There's repercussions if you don't get your training done. You're not moving forwards. So kind of highlight that to yourself. And if interruptions do arise, then plan it in a different time. So be strict with your training time. Like if someone asks me, you don't need maybe the same consistency as someone with myself who wants to compete in bodybuilding again. However, if let's say you are really wanting to improve, really wanting to progress, your consistency needs to reflect that. So if let's say you are planning on training on a Friday, someone asks you if you want to do something Friday night, it clashes with your training time. It's then your responsibility to either, if you want to maximise your progress, if you want to move forward, to either say no or rearrange the training time or go to that event, a social event, or see that friend later. But don't just bunk it off and not train, and then don't plan it in round it if you do have any commitments that come up. Rearrange it accordingly, but treat it like a job. My next tip is remove the resistance between you and training. So how can you make it as easy as possible for you to get to the gym and get your sessions in? So what we want to do is create as little resistance possible. That's what I mean by make it as easy as possible. So some things to consider is your training time. If I told you need to train at 12 at night consistently, how feasible do you think that will be? It's probably going to be pretty tricky. If I told you need to drive an hour there and an hour back for the gym, how much sessions do you realistically think you'll get in? If, let's say, every time you had to go to the gym, you had to put a wash on before, dry your clothes, then go, you're probably not going to be likely. What I'm basically saying here is make it as easy as possible for you to get to the gym. So training time. Pick a training time when you have energy, when you're motivated to train, when you don't have interruptions. If you don't start work extremely early, that could be before work. It will set the tone for your day. It will basically put your day and start on a positive note. Like nobody's, or very rarely, is someone going to train, have a great session, feel amazing after it, and then go and kind of have a poor diet for the rest of the day. It sets the tone, which can be a great thing about training first thing, as long as you can still get good quality sleep. If you can't train first thing, I'd recommend training straight after work or as soon after as possible. The reason being is if you're training before bed, it can impact sleep. The later it gets in the day, the less physical and mental energy you probably have. So what I recommend is do it when you'll have the most energy and when you'll be able to adhere to it best without any interruptions. Personally, if I had to train right after work, which sometimes I do, I'd pack my clothes, pack my food, and then I'd eat right before finishing work or when finishing work and go immediately to the gym. If you get down, sit, relax, put something on the TV, what's the likelihood of you getting back up again after that? Probably not very high. And with training environment, pick an environment you, one, enjoy training in, and two, is convenient to get to. You could have the perfect gym in the world, but if it takes ages to get there and you always put off or don't go just because of how convenient the training environment is, then that's not best for yourself. Pick somewhere that's going to be enjoyable to train at, but also convenient to get to. Because if let's say it's right next to your work, then it's going to be much easier to get to the gym than if you have to travel for an hour there and back. And prepare everything ahead of time. So, like I said, if you need to put a wash on, prepare your food before your session. If you need to do tons of errands before the gym, you're not going to be likely to get done. So put your clothes out ready, pack your clothes with you in your work bag or whatever, so you can just grab and go straight to the gym. Again, removing that resistance. And also avoid sitting down after work. Get it out the way so that so there's less likelihood of it not getting done. So that's what I recommend there. Basically make it as easy as possible for yourself to do the session. And as well as that, you can apply this tactic to a bit of a tangent, but you can apply this tactic to things you don't want to do. For example, if you're someone that's bad for overeating chocolate, don't buy chocolate. Don't keep it in the house. Don't keep it in sight. If you are someone who struggles in terms of getting to bed early, don't have distractions that keep you up, that you know will keep you up. For example, put screen time mode on your phone. Next up, enjoyment. So enjoyment is something massive that's going to impact our ability to stick to the plan. So is your current plan enjoyable? The coaching process isn't set in stone. The coaching process isn't black and white. I would rather someone do movements I think are suboptimal or not the best for muscle growth, getting stronger, or maybe burning calories. Not that should be the goal with weight training, but I prefer someone to do suboptimal exercises consistently than an optimal program but they don't follow it. If enjoyment makes that much of a difference, I'm open to adjustments. Does this mean you train your arms and chest every day and neglect your legs and back? No. However, if you love barbell bench pressing and that's going to make the difference between you going to the gym or not, regardless if I think it's the best exercise, that's going to be best for yourself and your circumstance. So be sure to communicate enjoyment if you think it's the limiting factor. This is a balancing act. Should all our actions be underpinned by enjoyment? No, but we want to also take it into consideration. Because the people who stick to training long term or people who love the process. And if you love the process, that's what's going to get results. So we want to kind of have that balancing act. I'm open to adjustments if it's going to affect adherence and effort. And what you can also do to make sure your enjoyment's there is, again, training environment. Are you training in an environment you enjoy? Do you prefer training with a training partner? If so, put that in place. Try and train with someone. If it's a friend, colleague from work, or anyone else really. Do you like listening to music? If so, utilise that. Utilise maybe caffeine before your sessions if you're training early in the day, which can help in terms of motivation to train and enjoyment. So all these things are things we can consider to get the most out of our training. Next up is remember your why. So why do you go to the gym? What drives you deep down emotionally? For example, if someone's why is to be fit and healthy enough to watch their kids grow up, that's massive. That's something that's extremely valuable. Rather than, oh, I just want my biceps a bit bigger, so I pick up girls when I'm out at the club. That might not be quite as strong a why, or might not drive someone as much. Or if they don't know their why, then they're not going to be as consistent. So what drives you deep down emotionally? For example, share my why with myself, or one of them. One of my whys is to give back to my family, to make my parents proud, to give back to my dad, who supported me a lot, massively, paid for tons of trips for me to go do different judo competitions. He was there for every training session. He was there for every competition. He was there whenever I needed him. He'd done whatever he needed to do for me to succeed in judo. Now that drives me emotionally. Like your why should almost, without kind of getting too deep, it should almost make you kind of tear up to an extent. If you don't know what your why is, you need to work that out and think. Don't just think on the surface level. Think deep down. So, for example, like, yes, I enjoy training, but if I just leave it at that, when the going gets tough, when I'm in a contest prep, when my food's extremely low, my expenditure's really high, I'm not going to be that motivated. Whereas if I link it to my deep down reasons why I'm driven, that's going to help massively. And like, link your why to your daily tasks. So, for example, sometimes the reason people don't stick to certain things is they don't see the value in it. For example, if you just look at training as, oh, we'll just burn a few calories, then it's probably not going to drive someone. Whereas if they view it as, this is going to help me stay alive longer, to actually see my children grow up, or to set a role model for my children, or to set a role model for X other individual, that's going to drive someone much more. So link your goals to your why, and that's going to help massively with your enjoyment, training included. And as for what you can do is, like, just your daily goals on a daily basis, like getting steps in, preparing a meal, going to bed 15 minutes earlier. Link that towards you stepping closer to your goal. And next up is sleep. So motivation to train and your consistency will be so much easier when sleeping consistently. And what I mean by that is, if someone's sleeping more, they're not going to be as hungry, because leptin and ghrelin, the hunger hormones, are going to be influenced by sleep in a negative manner if your sleep's poor. So basically, you're going to be hungrier, you're going to have more cravings if you don't sleep as well. As well as that, if you're knackered all the time, you're probably not going to make as sensible food choices. You're probably not going to stick to your diet as effectively. You're not going to be as likely to tick off your step goal and your training goal, let's be honest. So the better we can sleep, the more likely we are to stay consistent to the plan and progress. So good places to start are limiting caffeine intake 8 hours before bed, or if it's currently 3 hours, moving that to 4. If it's currently 4 hours, moving it to 5. So again, not having an all or nothing approach. Keeping a consistent sleep-wake time, that's one absolutely massive. You've got an internal body clock, and if that internal body clock is thrown off because you're going to sleep and waking up at different times, your sleep quality is going to be poorer, and you're not going to be able to get to sleep and wake up as easy. Sleep in a cool, dark room, your body temperature needs to drop, and light can affect your ability to get to sleep and produce certain hormones that help us sleep. Getting bright light upon wake will help our energy and alertness in the morning. It'll help spike cortisol, which is what we want. And as well as that, it'll help set us up for a good night's sleep at night. And as well as that, limiting the bright light before bed, as well as making sure your room's as dark as possible, ideally as close to pitch black as possible. Thank you very much for watching the video. The full video is available for my online coaching clients in the Coached by Charlie education section. If you are interested in online coaching or where else you can find me, please feel free to have a look at the links in the description. And lastly, if you did enjoy the video, any support is greatly appreciated, so drop me a like, comment what you enjoyed about it, and lastly, subscribe for more content from myself.